Tonight, Report from Vietnam by Walter Cronkite.
If the communist intention was to take and seize the cities, they came closer here at Hue than anywhere else. The destruction here was almost total. There's scarcely an inhabitable building in the city of Hue.
That was a short clip from the Netflix documentary Turning Point, the Vietnam War. CBS News anchor Walter Cronkite reporting on the ground in Vietnam in 1968. 5 years later, the U.S. would withdraw from the conflict. 2 years after that, the city of Saigon would fall. Wednesday marks 50 years since the end of the war, which divided the country between the communist North and the U.S. allied South. Commemorations were held in Vietnam's capital city with a focus on unity and lasting peace. This moment is also a personal one for the family members of those who left the country in search of a better life. Jamie Nguyen joins us now. She's a senior coordinating producer at CBS News, and her grandparents fled Vietnam to live in the United States. Jamie, so good to see you and talk about this. Really, it was your grandma who fled because your grandfather was in prison. In fact, he was in prison for 13 years before he was released, right? What can you tell us about what their life was like before all of this happened and the decision for your grandmother to leave?
You know, my mom grew up very privileged, right? My grandparents had a great life. He was a respected man of the military. You know, he worked alongside the Americans. In fact, he actually took a trip to America to train. So they had chauffeurs and maids. But obviously, when the communists started, you know, when the war happened, my grandmother was like, we got to get out. I got to get out. I cannot raise my 8 children here.
I was going to ask how many kids she had by that time, but it was 8. Yeah.
8 kids. And we cannot live in these conditions. I don't want them to live like this.
But what was that move like? What was life like in the United States when she arrived?
You know, it was tough to go from privilege to having nothing. I mean, they gave up their status for the opportunity to live in America. And my grandmother talks about it all the time. My grandfather didn't want her to go. You know, he said, what are you doing? Are you going to starve? Are children going to die? You don't know the language, you don't know the culture. And she just took that risk, gave up all of it. And we're so grateful for the kindness of strangers because they had nothing and they relied on, you know, a church group that sponsored them. The Bolden family took us in and showed us kind of how to live in America. You know, got us a little apartment. There were 8 people living in a 3-bedroom apartment. The one son who was here first got his room, and then everyone else had to share. So my grandmother shared with her 2 youngest daughters, and the older girls had their own room. Wow. So imagine that.
When you think back and reflect, I know you have a young daughter, and I'm sure you're sharing stories with her. What are you reflecting on, and what are you telling her?
You know, I'm trying to tell her that she has so many opportunities because of this decision that was made many, many years ago. You know, my grandmother took that
difficult decision.
She took that leap of faith. And, you know, frankly, I can't even move to the suburbs, you know, let alone like move to another country, like an ocean away and not know the language. So I want her to know that this risk happened so that she can have all these opportunities.
We have about 30 seconds left, but anything historical that you want to reflect on as well and leave us with?
I just, you know, America's a land of opportunity, and I'm so grateful that our family got to build a life here. You know, I wouldn't be who I am without my grandmother making that decision. My mother was pregnant with me. So I just wonder, 50 years later, is Lady Liberty still welcoming people the way she did before?
Jamie Nguyen, thank you.
Sure.
The documentary Turning Point, the Vietnam War is produced by CNL Studios, which creates original documentaries and unscripted series for multiple platforms, including Paramount+, Paramount being the parent company of CBS News 24/7. You can catch this 5-part series on Netflix.